to the Lowdown Mortgage Podcast, the show where we dive deep into the topics that directly impact the evolving originator. I'm your host, Connor Bartley. Bam! And joining me today is someone who went from $8 million in production one year to nearly 20 next year by not adding team members or fancy tools, but really by getting more intentional about her process and leaning into the right kind of support. She's a mom, a problem solver, and someone who does not take no for an answer without understanding why. Kelsey Majstorovic, welcome to the Lowdown.
Thank you so much, Connor. You're awesome, and you said my name right, so all the points in the
Hey,
world.
perfect. All right. Well, hey, I'm off to a good start, so I'll take it. I'll take all the wins I can get. But I'm really excited to have you on the show, Kelsey. For anyone listening, like we've known each other for years, and then there was a period of time where we probably didn't talk for a long time, and that's just sort of the rhythm of things sometimes. But it's great to catch up and see kind of this like revival of things in you, and so it caught my attention, and I really wanted to have this conversation. And so we'll start with this. Like a lot of loan officers, you worked at a couple of different companies, and not because you were hopping from one to another, but it's just sort of the natural progression of things. But when you think back to where you were kind of earlier on in your career versus where you are now and the things that matter to you, what has changed?
Man, and we don't have days to answer that, so I'll try to condense it. Obviously, I think as people and originators in our careers, you do change, you evolve to what you feel like you need or you want within your team or within your company. So over the years, I think what's really made a big difference for me is what I consider true leadership. And true leadership, in my opinion, is the people who are, they can be above you from a managerial perspective. Their role may be a little bit higher in the hierarchy, but those people are not just telling you what to do, they're actually in the trenches. So when I look for leadership in any capacity, or I'm watching, it could be a sports game, whatever it is, I'm looking for leaders who are in the trenches, who know the things that they're talking about because they do them themselves or they have a long history of doing them. And so for me at this point in my career, I feel like that's the most important thing for me.
Yeah, incredibly important and a great call out there, because in a business like this where everything's so technical and so nuanced and there's so many different scenarios that can come up, having someone that's by your side leading that has that experience and understands what you're going through on a day-to-day basis and isn't, 10 or 12, 15 years removed from kind of fighting those fights, it does make a difference. And when we were talking leading up to, recording this episode, you made a comment that the company you're at now, showed up kind of with like a let's try it mentality. Like they just had a much more collaborative culture there. What does that approach make possible for you that maybe you didn't have access to in the past?
Absolutely. I really feel like, especially, it kind of lines up, and we'll probably talk about it later, but with where I was at just realistically in my life, after having a child, and anyone can attest to that, things change a lot and your business is not the same, and it can impact and slow things down. So truly, I was volume wise not in the same spot that I was in years past. And this company took that on as like, hey, this is just temporary, and we know that you'll be back and you'll build your way back, and we believe in you and we're here to support you. So they took on that mentality from the very beginning, which just totally resonates with them as the culture of, hey, let's try, right? Maybe that sounds a little like a close date, for example. Maybe we're trying to close something really fast. Well, the chances are with all these other things, maybe it may not happen, but let's give it a go. Let's put our best effort. Let's think positively, and let's all work together to try to make this happen. And I feel like going in with that mentality just makes things a lot nicer for the client. It makes things nicer for me as a loan officer to feel like I'm supported. And then when I pull off these things that may seem impossible or crazy, it's like, well, they weren't really crazy because we always thought they were possible.
Oh man, I love that line. It wasn't really crazy because we always thought it was possible. That was like a mic drop right there. So, kind of switching gears to process and things like that. Like you've mentioned that you focus real heavily on getting as much documentation as possible up front before submitting a file. And I'm just curious, like what made you shift toward that approach, and what has been the difference that's come from that once it gets into like underwriting, and what are you noticing that happens once you put that file?
So I will say when I started originating, it was kind of, you're learning from other loan officers and hearing kind of how they do things. And it was told to me up front by a lot of the loan officers at the time, just issue the pre-approval letter, right? Get the application in, issue the pre-approval letter, ask for the documents, but don't ever wait on them to issue the pre-approval letter. So that's a very common practice, and it's still a common practice to this day. For me, what I found very early on was that it didn't it didn't yield the best results for me and my partner. So as an example, if I did that, then I'd get documents after I already sent them, looking at houses and driving around and making offers, putting down earnings. I mean, they're paying money to do all these things. And then if I start getting their documents that don't match up with what they put on the application, and most of it is just they didn't know, it wasn't anything malicious, but now they no longer qualify. And we could have figured all that out 3 weeks ago. So just that's a practice I've always had. I just do not issue pre-approval letters without seeing stuff, and my buyers know that, my realtors know that, and I tell them, hey, it's a respect thing for me, for you, for your agent, and it puts us all on the same page. We can game plan appropriately, and the transaction just goes so much smoother. And you hear people say, or if you read their reviews, it's like this was like the easiest transaction, and it's not because their file was easy or that the home itself was easy. It's because we were prepared. We were all on the same page, and there wasn't any of these surprises on this side because we all talked about it.
Yeah. Do you feel like with every document that you receive, as you're kind of putting that file together and gathering all of that, do you feel like just the buy-in from the client continues to rise the more that they're bringing to the table? Have you noticed like just a higher retention rate with your borrowers?
It is higher retention, and there's a trust level there as well, as like, hey, this person is trying to do as much upfront to make my process smoother. Because the flip side of that, again, when I started out, some of the loan officers were like, oh, well, good luck getting documents from people, you're going to scare them away. And while that could be true, every now and then you'll have clients that will say, well, my last loan officer didn't ask me for all this or whatever. That's very few people who make those comments, but even in those cases, I'm like, that's fine, they do business how they want to. I just want to be prepared, and once you under contract, we're moving. Like, I don't want to be now just asking you for things that I could have asked for up front. So I my clients love it. I have a lot of respect from them. The trust level is there, and they take ownership too in their own file of like, hey, I'm being asked to be an active participant, I'm not just sitting on the sidelines doing nothing.
Yeah, it reminds me of the quote, and I'm probably going to butcher it, but it's like, if I had 6 hours to chop down a tree, I'd spend the first 4 hours sharpening my axe. And it's really just like doing the work up front so that you can be as efficient as possible on the back end and really come to a faster finish result, right? Versus constant interruptions along the way because you cut corners early. Now you mentioned that you're also pretty selective about how you and when you prospect. Like, what's your thinking behind that, and how do you decide that when you're ready to scale up versus when you need to focus on what's already in front of you?
I love that you had asked me this question too, because it did prompt me to think about, is there certain things that I'm looking for? And I I'm a strange person that I go with a lot of gut feeling, and I go with a lot of intuition or observance when I try to guess or time or perfect everything, which is also second nature to me, of like trying to, I find that it doesn't really work out great that way. So for me, I really just want to make sure I am doing great quality work on my files. And if I feel like I'm in a capacity where I can deliver that same excellence to more people, then I will, prospect new realtors or have it. But if I feel like I'm doing a great job with what I have, and by me just adding more just to make higher numbers, but I'm going to compromise on my quality, then I won't do that. So I just take a look at my business and how my clients are responding, how my realtors are responding. Reviews are a big thing to me, constant feedback. So if the feedback is everybody is really enjoying the process and really having a great experience, then that may not be, I may can gauge up a little bit, but I don't try to go out there and work with every single real estate company in Texas. That's just not my thing.
Yeah, well, it's like trust. respect and loyalty are all, or integrity are all really like hard things to earn. You've got to earn those, but if you ruin one of them, you ruin all three at the same
Yeah.
time, you know? And
Yeah.
so
That's so
making
true.
sure that you're not taking on more than you can handle, not over promising and then to under deliver. I mean, all that's very important because at the end of the day, like we're dealing with people's lives here, you
Yeah.
know? I mean,
It's big
this
stuff.
isn't like an operating table, but like, you know, I mean, this is the biggest transaction they're ever going to make. You screw it up, and you could put people in a really tough situation.
Yes, it's a big deal. Like you said, it's not medical related, thankfully, but it's a big deal, and their finances directly for all of us. Our finances absolutely impact every facet of our lives, whether we want it to or not. It just does. So this is very important for people, and we should all take great care as best we can.
Yeah. So, kind of switching gears a little bit here, but on this along the same lines, this comes up a couple of times with some of the folks I've talked to on the show, where they thought the move was I'm going to hire somebody. I need some more support in here, and and then this thing's going to really crank. But then they realized, okay, maybe that wasn't the right move. Uh, and so it seems like that was kind of the situation you were in, right? Like you had somebody that was helping you. They, went off and went to another endeavor, whatever it was, and you said, you know what, I'm just going to stick with me, right? And what did you learn about your business like during that transition, and what surprised you about like doing the work by yourself all over again?
Actually love this question because it's kind of fun to dig back and think through. So, first of all, I had an amazing assistant for years, and my referral partners know her, my clients know her, and they love her. So, I have nothing bad to say. She was fantastic. And things just, it's life, right? Do I need to say more? Life happens, people make choices, and things sometimes end. Maybe it's temporarily, maybe it's forever, who knows? But we parted ways. And at the time, I just felt like that was a big loss for me. And I was going through some other things. And I just, in my heart, again, I'm a gut and heart person. I'm like, I don't think I can take on a new person, learn them, they learn me. I'm training them to my style. I just don't think I have the capacity to do that. And if I do that, I think my business will actually suffer a little bit more right now. And I can't afford for that to happen as I'm trying to rebuild. So I made the decision to I don't want to quote Ricky Bobby. I mean, I do, but I don't know if people are Ricky Bobby fans. But it became like Team Me. Like I was like it was Team Me. I had the Cougar on the race car, and I was like, okay, like it's just us, and I hope this thing works. But it was interesting. I started to get back a little bit more of, I think, some of the mojo, I want to say, that I had kind of lost after having my baby, having postpartum depression. I'd kind of lost some of that spark and that mojo. And so, in a weird way, it was a blessing because I had to totally, hey, it's back to selling every part of the process, putting on that good tone every single call, doing some of the things that I think we all can be out of practice on. So I really got to re work on my energy, like really refocus on my energy shift, do some of the things that I was out of practice doing, take more ownership on my files. My stuff was my files were super, super clean, even on the difficult ones or fast closings. The quality of my files, the feedback I was receiving from my operations staff was that my files were actually in better shape. And my system had changed essentially. It was just me doing everything. And I felt like my files got better, my production started skyrocketing. It was kind of crazy. It was not what I expected. I don't think I expected it to get worse, but I definitely didn't expect it to get better. So I was really happy that that was the outcome.
Yeah, well, I love how you like how you described it though, because it was like you got your groove back, right? Like you had
Yeah.
to flex muscles that you hadn't had to do for a while and got back in kind of the mix, and almost like got a chance to fall back in love with the job again, right? And then that energy propelled you forward, and you see it in the numbers, like I referenced, in the introduction. Like, that's really impressive, and I can just tell from talking with you that there's like a refreshed energy, right? So, but there was something you mentioned when we were talking before that I thought was really a great I mean, it's just like it's real life, right? Some days you just wake up and you got, you know, this thing going on with the kid and this thing's going on with the dog and something's going, and then you look up and it's 9:30 and it's like, holy cow, how did that happen, right? So you mentioned the what did you call it? The oh shit hour, I believe it was. So like, what
Yeah,
is that,
yeah.
and how do you deal with those days where it's just like it feels like everything is just running away from you and you gotta bring it back in?
Oh man, yeah. So I learned this fairly recently. Somebody said they plan for an oh shit hour every day. They time block an hour of their time and they label it. And during that time period, anything that pops up on our list, which if you're in real estate, that's your whole day, right? Like you have things on your to-do list and it's, it could be this big. And then everything else is like whoop. And then you're like me, you go back and you add things on, you check it off. You're like, okay, I just need to know. I need to write down that I did it to make myself feel better because I didn't get to the other 10 things that were already predetermined to be on my list. So that oh shit hour really time blocks for like, okay, these are all the things I'm going to try my best to attend to that were not on my schedule. And that way I'm not overbooking myself because I do have, in the past, I had a bad habit of overbooking and just being too scheduled in my day, and it did not leave any time for these incidences that happen in real estate or in your life that unfortunately have to take place in the day. So I've really enjoyed seeing that on my calendar. It makes me laugh, number one, but number two, I'm also like it has helped. I've seen that come up for sure.
Yeah. Do you find that by the time you get around to something that sometimes the problem's already solved?
Yes, yes. Sometimes just giving it time. Yeah, sometimes just giving it time as well. Yeah. And then by the time I get to it, it's like, well, we already called the insurance company, it's got it squared away, or hey, I went to the internet and
Yeah.
Googled what's an appraisal or something. You're like, okay. So, yeah.
Okay, cool. Great. Moving on. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
after we talked about that, I actually went to, social media and I put a post out there of just like, hey, you know, talk to someone who is doing this. It's made a big difference. And then just some of the comments that were coming through from other loan officers, they were like, yeah, I started doing that a while back and it's great how, things are already solved by the time I get to it. And because you don't want to disrupt that flow. Like when you're in flow state and things are going really well and you're in the middle of a file or whatever it is you're working on, and then it's one phone call it becomes three phone calls and it's
Always.
and then when you get back to that whatever it was you were working on, it's like you're starting from the beginning and you got to get back into that flow. So it's a really great suggestion. So Kelsey, as we kind of get closer to the end of this, if you were talking to the loan officer who's listening, who might feel like they're stuck, they don't have the support, and you're going to say, hey, maybe it's time you evaluate things. Like, what are some things that you would suggest a loan officer evaluate if they're looking at making any kind of changes?
Yeah. I think a few things. I think the main thing, if we're talking about changes in a company, I think the main things to look for are to talk to other loan officers that work at these other companies just to get a feel for how things are operations wise, underwriting wise, products, things like that. Everyone's always going to talk about rates, so I don't even need to say that. But, and I would also recommend talking to loan officers who have been in a company for more than 1 year. I just think that's really important because everything can be nice and shiny and fun, month one, month two, month six. But as you really get going and time goes by and you hit different market, I mean, every company goes through the market shifts and the changes. So I think talking to people who have been at a company and can see those ebbs and flows in those different time periods can really more accurately attest to what that company's like. So if you meant that from a company stance, that's what I would say.
Yeah, well, and then just which is great, and then also just like in their own personal, like if they're in a funk, like how do you get out of the funk? Any suggestions on that? Like how does somebody who feels just sort of stuck in their day to day?
Yeah. I will speak to this from my own personal experience, and I'll try to not be on this soapbox for too long. But sometimes when you're in these funks, and it can be for me, as an example, I'll just pick on myself. I was again battling very severe postpartum depression in 2024. I did not feel like I had the support that I needed at that time, professionally, personally. I didn't feel that that's what I was receiving, and in turn, it just kept snowballing and getting worse. So I did make some changes at the end of 2024, and then in the very beginning of 2025, where I basically cleaned house. And what I mean by that is I really evaluated things that were giving me energy and those that were draining my energy. And if it was draining the little bit of energy that I had, because I did not have much, it had to go or at least be temporarily out of my space. I mean, it wasn't meant to be disrespectful to anybody or to anything, but when you are in a funk, there's no one coming to save you but you. And I think once I finally hit that point where I was like, hey, I'm the only one who can pull myself out of this, and I have to make deliberate choices, and I have to change my own habits, because these habits are leading to these thoughts or these actions that are not helping me in these other areas, especially when it comes to business. It is a game changer, but it has to be a choice from within, and we're all going to hit hurdles. You're going to hit things, and it's not that you want to constantly make excuses, but eventually at some point, the world, the business, they don't care about the excuses. They really don't. And honestly, as we use them, I've heard this also, they're called blessing blockers. So actually, by allowing these blessing blockers to continue to be in your path, it's keeping you from all these other things. So even if you have to do it alone, make the changes and find out where you need help. And it's okay to ask for help, and you have to have accountability partners. Again, it could be personal, it could be professional, but finding people that are going to check in with you and genuinely care was a huge thing for me. I was so focused on, I gotta hit these numbers or do this. And it was like, hey, how are you today? Like, what are you going through? And I think just realizing, hey, I'm not a robot, I'm a person. That was a big one. And I heard this last week at an event, and I wanted to share it because it was so profound. And it ties into everything that happened in 2025. When I look back at it, it was just cool to hear someone say it. I was at a seminar, and the speaker asked, how many of you guys in this room, and it was mainly realtors, a few loan officers, and he said, how many of you in this room have business problems? Like, you have a problem in your business that you're trying to fix. And all of us are like, raising our hands. And he was like, wrong. And we were like, oh crap. I just raised my hand, like, shit, I'm gonna get kicked out. But he was like, wrong. You have personal problems that bleed over into your business, because all that your business is based on who you are as a person. Your problem in business is due to your lack of discipline. It's lack of, I was like, my goodness. Like, I'm sure we were all just like, in our seats, like cringing, but it's so true. When I look back at 2025, and again, 2024 was just the year, it was what it was, but it's like, man, all my personal problems were actually my business problems that I was having, right? It was all because of my personal life. And once I cleaned things up, I slept less. There was a lot of things that, like, I just were maybe not ideal. I had to clean it up. I had to cut things out. And by losing gain, I like lost emotional and stressful weight, right? Like, things were just weighing me down. Once I lost it, I gained so much, just peace, clarity, sharp vision. My mentality was back, my energy was back. And like I said, most days I slept like 5 or 6 hours. I had the most energy I ever had in my life. So that's like the condensed version. Okay. But man, if you need to make a change, guys, just do it. Find people who are going to cheer you on. You don't have to take over the world, but like, you got to take over yourself, and everything else is going to get exponentially better. But sometimes you got to lose to gain. That's all I can say.
Man, that is so real. I love it. So, last question. How are you defining success today? Because you've been through a journey, right? So, like, what is success for you today?
So I thought about that too. Obviously, whenever we're all thinking of success, we talk about numbers and president's clubs and all these things. And so I do think that's fair to kind of write those things down to have as a goal. I have mine written down. But more importantly, I do think, because this also brought me some happiness, is my version of success is loving who I am, being proud of who I am when I wake up in the morning and when I go to bed at night. And that doesn't really have anything to do with how many loans I close that day or anything else. It's like, do I like myself as a person? Am I being a good friend to people? am I being an industry leader in terms of not just am I producing a lot, but do other loan officers, could they call me and could I help them if needed, even if we're not the same company? I had a competitor call me actually last night to just talk about stuff and some things they were struggling with. And they first started off with like, hey, I don't know if this is awkward or weird. And I was like, it's not awkward or weird. Like, we're all doing this and we're in different stages of our careers. And even if I'm a few years ahead, I was that person starting out where I was like, man, I would love to talk to somebody and get a real answer and not a bullshit answer and not something that they want to tell me. Like, I want real information so I feel like I'm not going crazy, right? So I think success can really be, yes, of course, try to hit numbers, try to meet these goals because they are important. If you don't have any goals, then yeah, you may not end up anywhere. So have the goals, but also find ways to be happy. If you're genuinely being a happy person and you are proud to the way you operate and the way you treat other people on a daily basis, I think that defines your success as well.
Yeah. Love it. Absolutely. Like, I really appreciate you sharing all this, Kelsey. Like,
Thank you, Connor.
I'm excited to see what happens for you in the future. I know that there's going to be great big wins along the way, but at the same time, like, knowing that you have reached like this inner peace is, I mean, at the end of the day, that's what we all should be striving for.
That's awesome.
And I think, yeah. And so anyway, I just want to say thank you for joining the lowdown and kind of being a part of this conversation. And I genuinely think somebody's going to listen to this podcast and hear what you said, and it's going to really be a game changer for them, because those are the things that I think a lot of people do struggle with, whether they like to admit it or not, or maybe they're not even aware of what it is, but they feel it. And I think you are articulated it really well.
Thank you.
Anyway, thanks
Thank,
for being on the lowdown and for being so open and sharing your story.
thank you so much for having me. And I mean, really, for all you do for all the loan officers. I mean, this is so cool what you do. And I know throughout the years, like you really care. You care about this business. You care about other people, and we appreciate you too.
Thanks. All right. Well, I'll be cheering you on, Kelsey. You have a great one.
Thank you. You too.